welcome to the Holy Sparks podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I'm super excited and grateful for this very special interview. And without further ado, let me go ahead and edify the woman properly. Chaya Lester is a psychotherapist, inspirational speaker, and spiritual guide. She's also a wordsmith, performance artist, and unapologetic mystic, passionate about bringing Torah to life. Synthesizing ancient Jewish wisdom, cutting-edge psychology, and the arts, Chaya's work is all focused on the sole goal of helping people thrive. Chaya holds an Ivy League BA in religious studies and MA in clinical psychology. She also did extensive doctoral work at Oxford University on the theme of experiential Torah learning. As co-director of Jerusalem's Shalev Center for Jewish Personal Growth, Chaya teaches workshops and classes to locals and visitors alike. Her one-woman show about Israel, Babel's Daughter, has been hailed as a masterpiece by audiences from around the world. Chaya leads transformative workshops both in Israel and internationally. As a spiritual tour guide, Chaya has had the honor of guiding thousands of visitors in Israel. Among them are VIP visitors such as pop star Alicia Keys, Demi Lovato, Chinese billionaires, and U.S. senators. Chaya facilitates profoundly unique experiences, allowing visitors to see their trip to Israel as a truly life-transforming journey. Chaya lives with her husband, my good friend, Rabbi Hillel Lester, and their 4 energetic children in the vibrant heart of Jerusalem. Chaya, welcome.
Thank you. Wonderful to be with you.
Oh, so nice to be here. So I know it's late where you are, and maybe you got some sleeping kiddos nearby, but I want, if you would, for a moment, to reminisce on your family, back then a little smaller, making Alyiah, and tell me something about that.
I think the seeds of the Aliyah were planted many decades ago, really when I first came to Israel and absolutely fell in love with the place. I like to say that I went from living my life according to a 5-year plan to a 5,000-year plan the minute I got to Israel and just saw the majesty, the beauty of Jewish history and the Jewish story, the narrative of the Jewish people in exile and being brought home. And the poetry of that just spoke straight to my soul. And my first times in Israel was when I was in high school and went on the March of the Living through the concentration camps of Eastern Europe and then to Israel. And that was like my first awakening, and just kept on coming back year after year after that. And until eventually after college, I made Aliyah at that point. And then a couple of different degrees in different places for my studies, and then ended up in Berkeley getting my master's in clinical psychology and met up with my now husband, Hillel. And thank God we both shared this adventurous vision of coming back to Israel. And in the beginning, I will say, we did not necessarily know at that time, once we got married and came back together, we thought Hillel was going to do his rabbinic work and get his smicha, his ordination, and then we're going to come back to America. But then 3 years into his ordination, we're like, we cannot possibly leave. So we've rooted in so deeply to the soil of this place, the soul and the soil of this land, and raised our kids here. And certainly times like this historic crossroads that we're at right now, I look back at those decisions, and I see the enormity of the decision that we made to raise our family here and the commitment and all that comes with it. So we're living a whole new flavor of our Aliyah since this war, I'd say, where it's taken on whole new dimensions, and it's been extraordinary. Thank God.
Amazing. And I definitely want to get to life now and what's happening and give people an update really from the ground of what's happening in your life there. Talk a little bit about the Shalev Center and your work that you do so people can have more of a sense of that and how they can connect with it.
Right. So that was the other wonderful thing that happened in our decision to stay in Israel was, okay, how can we live the passions professionally that we want to? And so we came up with this beautiful idea. I'm a psychotherapist, my husband, we're both therapists and Jewish educators. And so we just decided to make this synthesis of psychology and healing work along with Jewish wisdom. And we founded the Shalev Center about 13 years ago. And with this idea we created workshops, couples workshop, where we do couples work that's like a combination of Imago meets the Arizal's Kabbalistic paradigms. And we bring together Jewish wisdom with psychology and for transformation and healing. And so we lead retreats, and it's been really deep, gratifying healing work. And so that's what the Shalev Center is. And we do it together, and it's a wonderful partnership. And we've gotten the opportunity from the Shalev Center, where we do the healing work and the retreats, then also branching out and doing spiritual tourism. I've done a lot of spiritual tourism when there is tourism here. And like you said with my bio, I have this one woman show. There's just all these pieces. Like anybody, any creative person, I think we all have we have passions, and we have all the array of gifts that we work with. And so mine have been healing and psychology, as well as spirituality and creative expression and poetry and spoken word. And so I just try to find whatever creative ways to braid all that together. And the Shalev Center has been a really wonderful vehicle for kind of doing whatever God sends our way.
I love it. And in terms of the people that come to the Shalev Center, is it maybe prior to COVID, it was more locals in person, or has it always been internationally online in Hebrew and English? Talk a little bit about that so people have a sense of who's coming and also who's invited.
Everyone's invited. It's really mixed. Half of my clients are international and on Zoom, and half of the people are local and come here to work in person. The retreats are mostly Israelis, Anglo-Israelis, so English speakers. I've not yet perfected my Hebrew to the point where where I do therapy in Hebrew. Although just recently I started working with a woman who was evacuated from Netivot, and I was like, it was either she was going to work with me or nobody at all. And so it was just, okay, we're going to work in Hebrew. And so it's a little out of my comfort zone. So mostly it's English speakers. We live in an English speaking bubble here, and that's okay. It's not ideal, but it's with how it works. It's how we've made it sustainable for us to be in our kind of totally out of our comfort zone and yet comfortable enough in our native tongue. So it's really been a mix. And it really, like I said, it's really who God sends us. It's really going to just be dependent on who's called into the work at any given time.
I love it. So if there was a couple or someone that was interested in a certain thing, they just go to your website, which of course we'll put in a link below, check it out, reach out to them. And so they work mostly in English. That's good to know. That's good to know. So
Yeah.
here's a question for you. What was really your vision for your life and your family moving to Israel, or maybe you're living it right now? Did you have a vision of the future, which you're now in?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it and that's how we create our realities. Fumbling forward is through our imagination and our visualization and our highest ideals. So I think, listen, I've always been like you said with the bio, I'm a like unashamed, unabashed mystic. Like I've always been a mystic. As when I was a kid, age 13, if you remember the Lockerbie plane, do you remember Lockerbie, the plane hijacking? You might be younger than me, but I was this 13-year-old, and I had this dream about a plane coming from London to New York and exploding. And I popped up out of bed. I was like, oh my God, that was so intense. And I ran to my parents' TV screen, and I turned on the television back in the day when you had to turn on the television. And there was my dream. And it was the Lockerbie. It was one of the first hijackings of a plane, apparently by some representative of the PLO who had hijacked this plane, and everybody was killed. And so for me, as like a 13-year-old, having this strange dream about this thing that ended up coming true was this sort of the cognitive dissonance of I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, the cognitive dissonance of my life in Memphis, a totally secular reality, and then these kind of spiritual moments or insights or awakenings or foreseeings that I would have through my dreams. And over time, just nurturing my spiritual life more and receiving more and more direction and vision. You asked about vision. So receiving more and more vision of where I'm meant to be going. And it led here. And it really led here. And so I think I've lived on my dreams, and I've lived on my spiritual callings, and then put that into the full manifestation of a household with children, where it's not just some fanciful spiritual imaginings, but it becomes very tangible material world with all of its details and repercussions. And yes, our vision was, let's create the line. We're going to be the ancestors who are the ones who came back to Israel after 2,000 years of exile, our family lines, and we're going to be the generation to come back and start the line forward here in the soil of Israel. So that's always been our guiding star, is we want to be the ones to create the family tree in this soil. And as I like to say that this is the best Gilgul yet. Gilgul meaning reincarnation. It's like this incarnation is, what an opportunity to be living the prayers of my ancestors, the fulfillment of the prayers of my ancestors, and hopefully allowing my children and grandchildren and descendants to live according to the national dream, the prophetic dream of our people. So it's always been about aligning the most practical, mundane details to the highest possible vision forward and fully informed with that 5,000-year vision.
And you're living it. And we talk
And
about
we're
the
living it.
visions and dreams, and that's the one thing. And then when you put it on your calendar, it gets closer. And then when you're like actually making hummus in the kitchen, it's real. You're there. So that's beautiful. Here's an interesting question for you. How do you talk to your children about God?
Nonstop. It's my poor kids. Oh my God. I talk to Listen, God for me it's a very vital, living, experiential, divine. It's something that I strive to not just have a theoretical understanding of God, but I quest after mystical experiences and tangible encounters with the divine as my daily bread. I tell them stories. I tell them all of my dreams and all my crazy dreams of things that came true, and my own prayer experiences. So really talking a lot from my own personal experience, which for better or for worse, because I think I'm a little unique. Like I don't know if my kids are going to have prophetic dreams in the way that I've had. I don't know what their relationship with God has been, but so I've shared kind of mine. And certainly every once in a while, I have two girls and two boys. Every once in a while, my girls will get prickly around, but why is it a man? Why is it like they have some questions and issues that are sometimes more complex religiously. And I try to just answer to the best of my abilities based on my great love of God and the ways that I've seen God in my life.
Amazing. I feel that children naturally, when they're in that theta state, brain development or semi-subconscious, however you describe it, they're just naturally connected to God. Like I remember walking in the forest as a kid and talking to God, and no one taught me how to do that. Just did it, right? And I think kids are just in that space, and it's like blowing on a flame, just to slowly cultivate it, you know? And it's a relationship. Like any
Yeah,
great relationship, it takes work, right? And that's the
yeah.
daily bread you talk about, daily practice. Okay, that was just a little personal question I wanted to ask you, but I'm sure some other parents will get great value out of that. And really, it's demonstrating your own relationship. That was the first thing I heard from what you just said. They're not hearing what your words are most of the time. They're just seeing what you're doing and how you're living. And if they see you in a relationship and they see you praying and they see you, and then if they ask you about it, you're talking about your relationship, like it's huge, hugely impactful. I love the idea that
Yeah.
like at some level, kids later on, they come back to this home base, whatever that home base is. And if your home base is this beautiful home full of God and Yiddishkeit, they'll be naturally drawn to that. And I think it's a sweet thing.
I hope so. We'll see. Now my oldest twins are 16, and this is when the laboratory really gets into high gear as to what do they take on as their own, and what are they coming back to. And at this point, I pray that they've had the best teacher. We've tried to provide them with the best educational environments, and there's a lot of ways in which things were not ideal along the way, and we'll see what their choices will be. And as long as they have their own relationship with their soul and with whatever the divine is for them, then I support that. And even if it's different than
Bless and release, right? So if we can transition, I want to talk a little bit on, you guys were in Jerusalem in Nachlot, I think on October 7th. And maybe you can talk about the experience for you guys there and then around that time period. And then I have some questions moving forward, whatever you want to share about that.
yeah, wow. So I want to say first that a few days before October 7th, I had a dream. And in that dream, it was a dream about Simchat Torah. So it was a dream about October 7th. This was like October 5th. And in that dream, I was putting out the Kiddush. I was in charge of the Kiddush. I was setting up the Kiddush at the shul. And this humongous wind came into the synagogue and just started blowing things off of the wall. And everybody was terrified. And it was very violent. And a part of the wall flew and almost hit one of my kids. And I'm like, everybody watch out. And then we look around, we see that everybody's okay. And we start to dance. And we dance just with this humongous fervor and joy. And then as part of the dancing, I start to fly. I start to fly up in the middle of this dancing. And I fly until I get to Philadelphia, to the University of Pennsylvania, which is where I went to school. And I get to, UPenn, and I'm standing in front of a fraternity house. And in front of this fraternity, on the ground of the fraternity house in the grass was what it was burnt into the grass was the word chai, life. And I sat there in the dream and I was like, what a strange combination. I thought to myself in the dream of this very violent burning of this searing of this message into the grass, but yet the message is chai, is life. And what a strange image as well, the terror of the wind that came and flew in, and then the ecstasy of the dance that followed. So it was a curious dream to me at the time. And then, of course, come October 7th, and it felt like really such a premonition because that's exactly what happened was we woke up in the morning, my husband and boys went ahead and went to shul, and I was actually at home at that point, and the siren went off, and we, of course, me and the girls run into we have across the little alley where we live, we have our neighbors let us come and partake of their safe room. And so we all went in there, and a bunch of people from off the street even came into down these stairs and into the safe room there. And we're like, this has happened not often, but it's happened before. Did not think so much of it and until the siren died down and we came out, and then another siren. We went back in, and this happened a few times, and we're like, wait, this isn't the norm that it's been for the past decade and a half. It was something was different. And at that point, I think, I don't know how many sirens in, at some point, Hillel showed up and we went back into the bomb shelter. And at this point, a man from the street also came into the bomb shelter, and he said, he was a religious man. He said, I checked the news, and he started telling us about what was going on in the South. And we were just, we couldn't, it was like we couldn't even compute really what does this mean, and certainly did not have a full picture. But so Hillel and I like started having really serious discussion about what do we do? Do we just hunker down at home for all of Simchas Torah? Like I was supposed to be in charge of the Kiddush. Like I needed to take things. I had things I needed to do. Like we were going to be there when our shul, when we do Simchas Torah, it goes from like 8 in the morning till 4:30 in the afternoon, usually on a normal Simchas Torah. It's a long journey. But that was our plan, was to be there entirely the whole day. And I was like, do we go there? Because we have to walk there. And what if what if violent people from East Jerusalem start filling the streets? We're about a 25-minute walk from East Jerusalem. We're not so far. And so we had to really deliberate how we wanted to manage it. And we decided that we were going to walk to shul along back streets, so not on the main streets to get to our shul, on back streets. We're going to take everything with us. We're going to take everything that we're going to possibly need for who knows how long. And we do it. We're terrified. I'm terrified as we're walking. I'm really terrified that somebody's going to attack us.
Were you with your kids too? All four kids?
So my boys were already at shul. My husband had come back to figure out what to do. So then we bring the girls, and yeah, we all go back to shul.
Okay.
And we get there, and like I said, in the dream, ecstatic dancing, but not in the normal shul. Underneath our shul is it's like the local bomb shelter underneath a big school. Enormous, beautiful bomb shelter became our shul. And we just, for hours and hours, we just prayed and danced with so much spiritual intensity. And I knew, not most people did not know what was really going on. I knew a little bit from that guy. And we just prayed our way through it with our beautiful family of community. And it was it was an unforgettable, connective, heartbreaking, glorious, all of those dialectics from October 7th till this moment. Like, it has been that dialectic of this is awful and this is awe-inspiring, awe and awful, just so mixed together constantly. So that day, for sure, the high blazoned into the grass, like it's that particular flavor of paradoxical intensity has been the definition of the past of this war for us. And I think for everybody.
And when you talk about, I intuitively get what you're saying when you're saying it's full of awe, as in awesomeness, awe, reverence, and awful. Talk about the awe. Talk about that side of it for you, because I think if you can unpack a little bit, it'll be very valuable for people.
You walk through the streets, and it's like I walk through the streets, and every soldier I see, I love them like my own child or like my own brother. You remember, right? Remember 9/11?
Yeah.
It's like ongoing 9/11. It's like that intensity that you felt on 9/11 of everybody next to you. You just love them and you feel so deeply, intensely connected. And it's a kind of a depth of connection that I don't know what it's like for Jews outside of Israel. Like, I don't know. I think it's also been a very deep and connective experience in its own ways. And for sure it is here because people are literally giving up their lives for this. That something happens when you make that decision. And I'll say this, because days after October 7th, as we were watching everything unfold, my family for sure was calling me up and being like, you guys get out of there. This is not worth, it's not, this could go really bad and you could die. And we had to make very tough decisions about, are we willing to die? And the minute you start thinking on that level, I just never expected that in my life, to be living with that level of engagement of life or death values. And what are my life or death values? And my life or death value is to live here, if God forbid, I don't think we're going to die, but we know a lot of people who have died to be here and to protect this place and to protect the Jewish people and to stand against the darkness with your entire being, willing to give up everything to fight off the darkness. And I don't know, something about living on that strata of existence it's deeply connective and life defining in a way that I really can't. It's ineffable. It's really ineffable. Cannot give expression to it adequately.
I got it. I think that the level of depth you experience is, for me, level of depth I experience in my life is always in relationship to the possibility of not being alive. And as this part of my spiritual practice, I think about that a lot. Not in a morbid way, I'm going to die, although, yeah, that's the only thing that we all know. Okay, besides that.
Yeah.
But having it in your face, in your space, and that your life is a burning testimony of values, it makes it so deeply meaningful and so connective and so vibrant.
Yeah.
I absolutely get what you're saying. And I think there's a famous teaching, I forget who brought this down, but basically when someone passes on, their influence expands beyond space and time and beyond locality, right? For example, after the Rebbe passed away, his influence was just rippled out in such a powerful way, right? And so all those souls that left us, the 1,1400 the very first day, all of the neshamot, their souls, their energy went back into the Jewish people and literally infused them with this incredible energy, which is part of how I describe it and how it feels. Does that resonate with you?
Everything resonating very much with me. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that
So
really captures it.
tell me, it's been almost 100 days now, and we're very much still at war, and there's still hostages that haven't returned, and we're praying for them every day. What is life like now? Is it anything close to what it felt like prior to October 7th? And maybe describe that for people here in the States.
Yeah. So we're in Jerusalem. So we've, in a lot of ways, had it pretty easy compared, obviously, to the people in the South, obviously, to the people in the North. Almost 200,000 people evacuated from both of those borders and who are living in hotels and in homes right here in our neighborhood. We have a like 25 families that we are in touch with of evacuated families who are living here from Sderot and other places. So we've been the safe haven here in Jerusalem. We've Since October 7th, we've had a handful of sirens and rockets, enough, but not nearly what has been happening in the center and in Tel Aviv. And so I think in Tel Aviv, in the center and the north and the south, it's obviously very intense. And then in the West Bank. So I think we've been like a little bit shielded. So our kids were able to go back to school within several weeks, and we were able to get back to work. And life has been pretty normal, except that everybody is just totally engaged with the war consistently in terms of just being up to date on everything that's going on and trying to take care of the evacuated families. And that's been a big part of what we've been doing, raising money for soldiers, trying to get things to soldiers. There's been a frenzy of chesed and of giving and of people just doing whatever they can to help everybody else. It's really been a frenzy, I'd say, it's been amazing. I think it's been like, as a mental health professional, I think it's been a little bit intense in terms of that's one way that people have been expressing their trauma is like a frenzy of helping. And thank God, it's great. But so it's been the energy of that has been intense. And we've just been working on trying to find our ways to regulate and stay healthy. So turning on, there's all this new, there's like a genre of Israeli war songs that are really fun and upbeat and like powerful and meaningful. These war song genre, that's what I call it. And so we'll just turn those on and dance often and pray and cry and dance. And it's just there's a daily grappling with the war and the reality and the intensity of it. But every once in a while there's like the concentric circles of trauma, and there's those who are at those center circles where they're the ones losing their life or losing their loved ones. And there's concentric circles. So our family has been a little bit on an outer circle because our oldest kids are 16. So we have not been in those center circles, but we have gone to known several people who have been killed, soldiers, and also on October 7th. So we've been to funerals, and that's been very intense. Our next door neighbors have three sons who are in Gaza, fighting in Gaza, who they were not in touch with at all for months. Very, very intense for them. And this past Shabbos, I'm walking to Shul, and there I see the three of them. They're home, finally sent home for the first time. They were all there for Shabbos, these beautiful, majestic men. And I started crying when I saw them. I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe you're here because we've been praying for them very intensely and not knowing what was going on. But it's my next door neighbor's kids. It's not mine. They're my other neighbor, son on the northern border, one of my dear friends and community members, husband has been gone on the northern border. So we're supporting her. We have women's groups where we make space to process. It's been really intense.
Here's a question. So you talked about the frenzy of help and helpful activity. So for people that watching this, is there anywhere you would like to direct people for what can people say in North America? How can we help? How can we help you? How can we help the Shalev Center? Or is there anything in particular? I've done episodes where I've wanted to raise money for a specific family and things like that, but How can we help?
Yeah, thank you. There are a couple of places I've sent people. So one is to a fund that we have to help the evacuated families here in the neighborhood, where every week we give them enough money to go and do their grocery shopping. And so there's a fund for that I can definitely give you a link to. I also, my good friend whose husband, Udi Hammerman, is up north on the northern border. On the north, all the soldiers, like hearing stories, we're hearing more stories now because some of the soldiers are coming back, and we have clients, some of our clients are soldiers. And so we're hearing more stories about just how intense it is for the soldiers fighting just on a survival level, not even about being attacked, but just living in the elements. So my friend up north, his husband is up north, they had to prepare for winter. They're living out in a forest on the border watching Lebanon, and they weren't given even tents. They had to raise their own money. What they did was they raised their own money and bought wood and built themselves shelter. Like the government wasn't, the army wasn't just providing everybody with everything that they needed. No, they took their own money. I know another friend who said that his battalion in Gaza raised their own money to buy their own drone, like a high-level drone, that they just were like, we need a drone. The army's not giving us a drone. So we raised our own money to get a drone that's really helping us with this tactical issue and that. There's so much of what's going on. You think that there's this governing body that's handling everything. It's just like us, that frenzy is because it's needed. So also, if there's an ongoing need for just basic life survival, so I also have a link to my friend on the northern border who is trying to just live and in very intense conditions, very challenging day-to-day survival conditions beyond being attacked, just living in the elements. So those are two things that come to my mind. And I can't even, when I'm saying this, I can't even imagine that. I can't actually imagine what that must be like for them.
Yeah, a question. So your friend that went up to the Lebanese border, he's enlisted in the army, or he just chose to do that to go and to explain a little more?
I probably shouldn't have said his name because I don't know what. Anyway, sorry. He has 4 kids. This man is a genius. He has a doctorate. He's a psychologist, brilliant person, and happens to be just incredibly courageous and high values. He's the one who reads Torah and leads half of the davening at our shul. Just incredible quality individual. And there are people that we know who are older. I mean, almost 50. So older, who are miluimnikim. So they're in miluim. That is to say, they're not the 18 to 20-year-old young men who are
In
down
res-
fighting in Gaza as much.
yeah, in
So
res-
they have chosen to give their time, and they're there somewhat volunteer wise. But he's been there and left his family. I have another friend who left his family and has been serving. And these are guys like you who are like this, if I don't do it, who's going to do it?
totally.
And who've just given up everything. They haven't made a penny, and they left their businesses, and they don't know what's gonna, one of my friends doesn't know what's gonna happen to his business. It could be gone by the time he tries to come back and revive it. And he's not having to do it, he's choosing to do it. Incredible caliber of people. There's this idea of in Kabbalah of the makif and the or pnimi. The or makif is this idea of a surrounding light. The or pnimi is like the integrated light of consciousness. So the idea of an or makif is that we have the potential of the grandeur of who our souls can be, but it's not yet manifested or activated or integrated. And things like a war takes those potentials that are surrounding us, like all my potential heroicism, and it creates an activation and an integration of those lights like nothing else.
Absolutely.
So
Wow.
we're just witnessing that everywhere. Heroism.
Yeah, it's a master exfoliant. Quick question. So I'm here actually at the JCC campus, and it's largely Israeli where I am. I just led this meditation, and it was like 90% Israelis that mostly speak Hebrew, and a couple of
Wow.
Anglos. And my kid's school is also like 60%, 50 to 60% Israelis, and so we have a lot of Israeli friends, and I feel like I'm half Israeli in my life and half Californian. And one of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of my Israeli friends, like they listen to news hours and hours a day, what's happening. And I think maybe that's a thing from being in Israel and needing to know what's going on. My question for you is, how can people here and there sort of balance out taking in the information of what's happening and taking care of themselves? How do you counsel people around that?
Yeah. I like to think about it that we have a symptom feedback system. And if you're doing too much or listening too much or volunteering too much or whatever you're doing, if it's too much, then your system will come up with some symptom. You'll get sick, or you'll feel anxious, or you won't be able to sleep at night, or you'll do too much emotional eating, or whatever it is. And that's just a feedback system. If there's things that you're not being able to quite control, then those are really good indicators that you're doing too much. So I say just keep listening. I think the biggest one I know for me was for sure in the beginning was my sleep being disturbed and not sleeping. And sleep is a really quick symptom to pop up when you're over anxious. And so I would notice when I was watching too much news or certain types of news, if I wasn't sleeping, then I needed to cut that down. So it's just about, and I've had some clients who have gone into mania. Like there's been like people who are go into a manic state in response to everything. And okay, that mania is like it's here to show you that you need to slow it down. So, and then there's people that go to the like people go their different ways in response. Some people will turn up, there's the phone speeds, right? It's like you want one a lot of people go into 1.5 speed. A lot of people also go in 0.75 or like turning it down and not being able to function. And you want to try to stay balanced and notice when the speeds are going too high or too low. And I think it's really all about the balance. And obviously we're not we should be feeling and we should be anxious and we should be having nightmares. That's all appropriate. But as much as we can to just try to stay aware of our symptoms as guidance for us as we're trying to navigate just incredible crisis. And then there's also that piece about using an emergency for the emergence that it brings. And like we said before about that heroism and the integration of our potential that can come through it. There's a lot of really important empowerment that and clarification of self and mission and values. There's a lot of really positive psychological growth that's happening for everybody around this. And it's like you got to stay that in that dialectic of I'm freaking out and I'm not handling this well. And here's the ways I'm growing. And I got this of just going kind of step by step back and forth. The dialectical behavioral approach of knowing that we're going to get thrown off and we're going to go deep and then we're going to restabilize and just doing that self-regulation along the way. That's the vessels and the tools that we're really all having to refine right now.
I love it. That's great. Wise counsel. Okay, two final questions for you. And if there's anything else you want to talk about, let me know. So first question is really, what is your vision for the future in here in Israel?
Yeah. Okay, so with this, I'll answer with another one of my dreams. And I feel a little silly talking about my dreams, but it is for me a vital lifeline to my own alignment with my highest truth. And so some people don't resonate with it, and that's okay. I'm going to talk about it anyway. When October 7th happened, I just had this image that kept coming back to me. There was the dream about the Philadelphia and UPenn. It was so interesting when finally UPenn became like this kind of like the center of this Ivy League, poison Ivy League reality. But so there was that dream. But what was really striking me after October 7th was the memory of a particular dream that I had, and I couldn't quite remember it, but I kept on referring back to it in my head and brought me a lot of comfort. And I'm using this because it's really my answer to your question, which is, so finally about October 9th, I was like, I just got to find this dream. So I do this thing where I every morning when I wake up, I remember my dream and I put it into my phone. This is a really good thing to do, is just to like make a little voice message to yourself of your dream so you don't forget it. And then every 3 weeks or so, I write them down. So I have a Google Doc where I write down all my dreams. And the Google Doc's really nice because it has all the dreams in one place. And all you have to do is go into find and you put in a word and it takes you to that dream. So I remember the dream was about this tree. So I put in the word tree and I go back and I find this dream. And I look at the date of the dream, and the date is exactly 1 year to the day that I was reading it 1 year before. So, okay, that's interesting. And the dream is actually a two-part dream. And I forgot the first part was really important. First part of the dream was October 7th. It's a full-on attack. It was a horrific attack with bombs and with Hamas terrorists, the full thing, and awful. And it was so horrific that I woke myself up from the dream and I just prayed to God. I was like, dear God, and I wrote this, I recorded this into my phone. I was like, dear God, how dare you do this to us? How dare, we already went through the Holocaust. I cannot believe that you would be doing this to us again. It was like this, very disturbed and very like this Holocaust level. But I know also it was very important to go back into nightmares. After you wake up from it, it's important to be fearless and go back in to see what's on the other side of the scary material. So I went back to sleep, and the second dream was the one that I had remembered. And the second dream was it was a Messianic era. It's an era of redemption. We were all wearing beautiful clothes and dancing underneath this beautiful fruitful tree. And I had my grandchildren with me. And I had this little phone or something where I'm able to show them all the stages that allowed us to get to this Messianic moment. And I showed them the first stage, which was that first dream of the attack. And I showed them the picture, and it comes in the form of this tree that gets burnt out, and it's a burnt out husk. And I show them frame after frame, and you have to take out the burnt out husk, and they're taking it away, and they're bringing in a new tree. And this tree, the old tree, wasn't able to bear fruit. But this new tree that they bring in, it's a little tree. They bring it in, they plant it, and it grows. And it shows like the stages of this tree's growth until it finally becomes a fruit-giving tree. And there was a big one, and then there was also a smaller one that went under the same process. Don't know what any of it means, but I woke up and there was a sense of, we have all gone through this process, and we are a totally refined people. Of God consciousness. We have reached unitary God consciousness, where we know that anything that's being sent to us, it was not a full era of peace. There was still like danger around the borders, but we didn't care because we were so connected to God that we knew that whatever God's going to send, it's from God. We can handle it, and we're going to sit under this tree and rejoice. And it was one incredible dream. And I woke up from that dream and I recorded that one, and I said, I know that this is a prophetic dream. I don't know what it means. I don't know what the tree represents. I don't know what the big one is, what the little one, I don't know. I wish I knew. I don't know though. But I knew that it was a prophetic dream. And that vision has been my guiding light of there is some process here that is taking us to a new paradigm that's going to be a fruitful paradigm in the way that the old paradigm didn't work. It didn't work. So I don't know, but whether that means, who knows, maybe it's the old paradigm of Hamas doesn't work, and it needs to get rid of Hamas fully and have a partner who we can be a Palestinian partnership or a state. I don't know exactly what it's going to mean, but I do think we have an opportunity here in this awful thing, an opportunity for really rooting out something that wasn't working and bringing in something that will bear fruit. I have a lot of hope around it, mostly because I had this incredible dream and I really trust my dreams. If I didn't have the dream, I'd be a little more freaked out right now. But the dream literally has given me guidance and comfort that I can't even, in a worldly manner, account for how helpful it's been for me to have this vision of, I know this is leading us to something truly redemptive and a new paradigm, and it's going to be good. It's going to be great. And we are getting refined, greatly refined in the process.
I love it. Okay, so bonus question. Talk about Mashiach. What's Mashiach look like for you? Are we in the war of Gog, Magog? Where are we at? And what do we have to look forward to?
Let me say this one thing about my favorite Torah about Mashiach. So we have the concept of Geula. Geula means the redemption, Messianic era. And then there's this concept of Gola, which means the exiled consciousness. So we have this paradigm where we have the Geula, which is this thing that we're all wanting, this Messianic era. And then we have the Gola, which is the exiled consciousness. And the Jewish people have been in exile for all the thousands of years, and etc., and our own individual exiled consciousness as well. So the word Geula and the word Gola are the same exact word, except for one thing, that Geula takes the letters of Gola and inserts one extra letter, and that's the Aleph. You put the Aleph right down into the middle of Gola, and you get Geula. And the Aleph, according to Chabad Chassidut, the Lubavitcher Rebbe talks about how the Aleph is the letter of Aluf HaOlam, which means the master of the universe, the champion of the universe is the Aleph. So if you like bring in God consciousness into the middle of that exiled material, all that Gola junk, you insert this Aleph, it transforms that all that painful material into the blossoming redemptive material. So the Aleph represents the divine consciousness. Aleph also is the letters of Aleph can also spell the word Pele, which means miracle. So it brings in miraculous consciousness, miraculous in the sense that it's beyond the nature, it's beyond the mundane. It's like something wondrous. And then also the Aleph represents Ulpana, which means like an ulpan, means schooling and instruction. And that it's through a process of schooling and education and instruction and growth and learning that we transform that negative Gola into the Geula. We cannot have Geula without the Gola material. It won't exist. It's the necessary ingredients for our redemption is all this negativity and all this pain and all this horror. It's the same material. So that is how I view the Messianic era, is it's taking all of the challenges and finding the divine in it and finding godliness in it. And that's happening in our own consciousness individually, each of us individually. I'm able to find God in my challenges in my life, and I'm able to grow through them and know that they're here for my good. And I work with them and I pray through them. And I do that individually. And then on a national and global level, there is that refinement and that awareness of the divine that trickles down. This real trickle down theory of that it trickles down into every cell of our reality and creates new political realities. It creates new environmental realities and financial and on all the levels. I'm trained to be a ketamine assisted psychotherapist. So using psychedelics as medicine for healing, I feel there's real pathways that are emerging for the kind of holistic healing that we each need, all of us need individually, that will impact on larger collective levels. I see that coming. It's a long, slow process. In my dream, I was pretty old, but we got there in my lifetime, not to the place where there's only peace and there's no more conflict and everything's perfect, but to a place of, I know God's in control, and enough, a critical mass of us know that enough. That imbues reality with the fruitfulness and the light that allows the pain to be dissolved into joy.
Beautiful. I love it. Okay, final question for you, Chaya, and thank you for your time. I know it's late where you are. I really appreciate your wisdom, and I look forward to having Hillel on a subsequent episode as well. What does the Jewish world need now most, and why?
I mean, on a practical level, I think we need really good haspara. We need a better ways of communicating our truth in a world overrun by misinformation and conspiracy and lies. And we're just like the thing at The Hague today is so disturbing to me. And we need to somehow be communicating our truth. We need to be the light into the nations. Right now, we can't. Right now, we can't be hating the nations. If we're going to be a light to the nations, we need to be loving the nations, even if they're hating us, and we need to be teaching the nations and communicating and educating somehow better than what we're doing right now, educating the world about the Jewish story and the rightness of our being here and what we're up against and the evilness that we're fighting. And we need to be expressing that better. So on a practical level, I think that's what we need. On a spiritual level, like for me, I think that we all need to taste God, and that should, like, enough with the Judaism that's about intellectual learning, enough with, or even just halacha, or like we need to be having true experiences of the divine and experiencing a divine consciousness through breath work, through our own healing processes. We need to heal and access the divine light within us. And that shouldn't just be some fluffy thing. I believe very, very immensely in the power of our dreams and our unconscious and the collective unconscious. And we need to start honoring that more instead of the dishonoring of the unconscious material and dreams and spirituality. The world needs to start valuing that. The Jewish world needs to start valuing and training and educating our children more towards that experiential taste of God, not just some theoretical story about not tasting God, but like talking about God. That's irrelevant. You just need to taste God. So we need to find ways to do that and educate better in those directions. And we got to have a lot of compassion on ourselves too. This is so intense. It's such chaos, such upheaval, and just staying connected to each other in our communities and with a lot of love, unity, definitely unity, trying to get beyond our divisions within the Jewish world. My God, we see it in Israel. It's so painful. It's been such a joy and a relief to not have all the disunity that we were plagued by. And I'm really nervous about it coming back. But what we've tasted here and the unity and the connection and the love and the family in Israel and also amongst the Jewish people worldwide has just been such a joy. And I hope that continues.
Man. Okay, well, Chaya, thank you so much for your time. I want to end with a blessing,
Thank
as I always do on the
you.
Holy Sparks podcast. Hashem should bless you and your family with peace, parnasa, shalom, and many more people coming to you for your vast and deep skill set, because I think you have a lot of what people are looking for right now, which is concrete tools for how to deal with a chaotic situation. Not only that, but also that you should be a conduit for people to experience God, to taste God, as you say, because I absolutely agree that's what we need. This is not theory anymore. The rehearsal is over. The gig is on
Mm.
now, and that people should feel comfortable asking for help. And even if they have no experience and had a challenging relationship with the concept of God or with God, they should be open to putting in the work into that relationship, like any relationship, which requires work and which requires confrontation and getting uncomfortable and growing and opening, because that light of God consciousness is what we so desperately need. And yeah, I'm just honored to have you guys in my life, and Hillel as 25 years now. We've been friends for a long time. So thank you so much for making some time. And there'll be some links below to connect to them on the Shalev Center and other things that they're doing. And I wish you the best. We'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you. Blessings in your shlichut and in the work, God, how many people you're touching, and the music and the light and the wisdom that you're bringing is just so precious and so needed. And it should just, you have a strong vessel to continue to share the light with you and your family too.
Okay, everyone, we'll see you on the next episode of the Holy Sparks podcast.